The game of truth and lies. The girl who changed everything. All right, Miss Lawson, let's play a little game. Judge Henry Whitmore leaned forward, a smirk tugging at the corners of his wrinkled mouth. His silver hair gleamed beneath the courtroom lights, and his fingers drummed lazily against the polished oak bench in front of him. It's called truth or lie. I'll say something, and you tell me if it's the truth or a lie. Easy enough. His voice was light, almost playful. Almost. But the weight behind it wasn't playful at all. The courtroom murmured. Some chuckled. Others shifted in their seats, uncomfortable with the spectacle unfolding before them. But no one spoke up. The room was full. Jurors, reporters, onlookers, officers. All of them there to see the arrogant troublemaker fall apart. But 17-year-old Kira Lawson didn't blink. She stood inside the defendant's box, her deep brown eyes unreadable. Her hands were cuffed in front of her, the bright orange jumpsuit hanging loosely on her thin frame. And yet, despite her situation, despite the weight of the chains they'd already tried to wrap around her life, Kira didn't look afraid. She looked ready. Everyone in the room knew exactly what this little game was meant to do. It was meant to humiliate her, to break her. That it was supposed to show everyone that no matter how smart she was, how defiant, how sure of her own innocence, she didn't stand a chance against the system. And yet, there she stood, unmoving, unbroken. Let's start, Judge Whitmore said, clearing his throat as if he was on a game show stage rather than presiding over a trial that could end a young girl's life as she knew it. The Constitution of the United States guarantees a fair trial to all citizens. His gray eyes sparkled with amusement as he tilted his head. Truth or lie? Kira's head tilted slightly. She didn't rush. She didn't look away. Lie, she answered, her voice calm, clear. And in that moment, you could have heard a pin drop. Gasps swept through the courtroom. A woman in the second row shook her head. An officer chuckled under his breath. A reporter scribbled furiously into his notebook. Judge Whitmore's smile widened. Really? He said. You think the Constitution doesn't guarantee you a fair trial? Kira lifted her chin. It guarantees it on paper, she said, her tone steady. But not in practice. Not for people who look like me. The system is flawed. Her gaze never wavered. Judge Whitmore's fingers paused in their drumming. That's a lie, he said sharply, but the murmurs behind him suggested otherwise. Next one, he said, shifting uncomfortably. The law treats everyone equally, regardless of race or background. He smiled again, but it was thinner this time. Kira's response was immediate. Lie. There it was again. Another gasp. A ripple in the jury box. And for the first time since the trial began, Judge Whitmore's face twitched. Why do you say that? He demanded. Because, Kira said softly. If that were true, I wouldn't be standing here right now. The silence that followed was heavy. The judge leaned back in his chair, tapping his fingers more slowly now. But then Kira did something that no one expected. She turned to him, and she smiled. Your Honor, she said, since you like games so much, how about I ask you one? Judge Whitmore blinked. I beg your pardon. You wanted to play truth or lie, didn't you? She asked, taking a small step forward. If a judge knowingly ignores evidence that proves someone's innocence, is that justice? Her voice rang out, clear and sharp. The judge's jaw clenched. Truth or lie? Kira pressed. The room held its breath. And in that moment, the game flipped on its head. 3 months before her life turned into a courtroom circus, Kira Lawson was anything but a criminal. Everyone who knew her would have said the same thing. She was brilliant. She wasn't just the valedictorian of her Brooklyn high school. She was a prodigy, accepted to Harvard, Columbia, and Yale, full scholarships all around. She tutored younger kids at the local community center 3 nights a week. She could read legal briefs like a seasoned attorney and outdebate most adults on any subject. But none of that mattered when the system decided you didn't fit the mold that it had started on a rainy Wednesday. Kira was walking home from the community center when a police cruiser screeched to a halt beside her. 2 officers jumped out. Hands where we can see them, one barked. Kira had raised her hands, confused but obedient. We got a call, the taller cop said. A robbery at the gas station on 4th. Suspect matches your description. Her description, I've been tutoring kids all afternoon, Kira said. The officers didn't care. They twisted her arms behind her back. The cuffs were cold, tight. Pain shot through her wrists. And in that moment, Kira knew. This wasn't about facts. It wasn't about justice. It was about power. For 2 days, Kira sat in a gray interrogation room. She told the detective the truth. She told him about the community center's security cameras, about the kids who saw her there. But the detective just smiled. Funny thing, he said. Those cameras? They had a glitch. No footage was recorded. Kira's stomach twisted. She knew what that meant. It meant someone had erased it. It meant someone had decided she was guilty before anyone asked a single question. And now, she stood before Judge Whitmore, that a pawn in a game rigged from the start. Truth or lie? Kira asked again. The judge's fingers twitched on the bench. The jury watched, wide-eyed. You're not in control here, Miss Lawson, Judge Whitmore said tightly. Kira smiled again. You sure about that? Before he could respond, the courtroom door slammed open. A man in a gray suit strode forward, his breath coming fast. Your Honor, he called. We have new evidence. Gasps rippled through the room. Kira's heart slammed against her ribs. The man introduced himself. Jacob Vaughn, he said. Attorney for Miss Lawson. Kira blinked. She didn't have an attorney. She'd been given a tired public defender who barely remembered her name. But Vaughn laid a thick folder on the judge's desk. Security footage, he said. Footage that proved Kira wasn't anywhere near the crime scene. Footage that had been deleted, the prosecutor stammered. I didn't know, she said. Vaughn's eyes were cold. Maybe you should explain why this footage was erased. The courtroom was silent. Judge Whitmore looked pale now. He rifled through the folder, his expression darkening. And then 2 officers stormed in. Judge Whitmore, one barked. It's classified. The courtroom went into recess. But Kira knew something was wrong. In a holding cell. Vaughn knelt beside Kira. Someone wants you gone, he said. Gone? Gone. He confirmed grimly. They escaped. Lights went out. Chaos erupted. They escaped. That wasn't supposed to happen. But did. Kira found herself running through dark hallways, her heart racing. She and Vaughn were joined by Diane, a woman with sharp eyes and a steady hand. They escaped through alleys, climbed fire escapes, ducked through shadows. But they weren't just running. They were hunting. And they found something. A connection. Judge Whitmore, a billionaire named Richard Callahan, the man who funded the judge, the man who had orchestrated everything. Callahan wasn't just powerful, he was untouchable, and he wanted Kira gone. They found the files, the evidence, but they needed more. They needed to expose him publicly. And so, they made a plan. The gala. Callahan's most public event of the year. 2 nights later, Kira walked into the gala. A black dress. A fake smile. A mission. They uploaded the files. Callahan found them. Guns were drawn. But it was too late. The files hit the big screen. The world watched. Corruption, bribery, murder. All of it exposed. Callahan panicked. Pulled a gun. Isaiah Lawson, Kira's brother, believed dead, shot him first. Chaos erupted. They escaped. Callahan was arrested. Judge Whitmore was disbarred. The system that had almost crushed Kira, it cracked wide open. Weeks later, Kira sat on courthouse steps. A hero, but still a fighter. Isaiah sat beside her. What now? He asked. Kira smiled. Law school, she said. And maybe Judge Lawson? Isaiah grinned. Kira laughed. Yeah, she said. Judge Lawson. And for the first time, the system wasn't something to fear. It was something to fix.